Footnote 1. Trial by the country and no taxation without consent mutually sustain each other, and can be sustained only by each other for these reasons. 1. Juries would refuse to enforce a tax against a man who had never agreed to pay it. They would also protect men in forcibly resisting the collection of taxes to which they had never consented. Otherwise, the jurors would authorize the government to tax themselves without their consent, a thing which no jury would be likely to do. In these two ways, then, trial by the country would sustain the principle of no taxation without consent. 2. On the other hand, the principle of no taxation without consent would sustain the trial by the country, because men in general would not consent to be taxed for the support of a government under which trial by the country was not secured. Thus these two principles mutually sustain each other. But if either of these principles were broken down, the other would fall with it, and for these reasons, if trial by the country were broken down, the principle of no taxation without consent would fall with it, because the government would then be able to tax the people without their consent, inasmuch as the legal tribunals would be mere tools of the government, and would enforce such taxation, and punish men for resisting such taxation as the government ordered. On the other hand, if the principle of no taxation without consent were broken down, trial by the country would fall with it, because the government, if it could tax people without their consent, would of course take enough of their money to enable it to employ all the force necessary for sustaining its own tribunals in the place of juries, and carry their decrees into execution. By what force, fraud, and conspiracy on the part of kings, nobles, and "a few wealthy freeholders," these pillars have been prostrated in England, it is desired to show more fully in the next volume, if it should be necessary. End of Appendix Taxation by Lysander Spooner. Recording by Robert Scott. MojoMove411.com. MojoMove411.com. August the 21st, 2007.